Broadcast is back, baby.
One of those portable screens,
Oh, right, yeah.
so I could play GBA game anywhere. And then just because I had the GBA, but I was like, no,
Yeah.
this is awesome. I can make
Yeah.
this transformer out of my GameCube and I can bring it anywhere. Oh man, I never was able to do it because I never got the other accessories, but just the possibility was so enticing.
You could have been one of those top tier gamers who play WarioWare Tilted on your GameCube.
What?
So you tilt the whole GameCube.
Yeah, so that's me as a kid. That's what I wanted to do.
You were so close.
Andre, I think if we start talking about retro gaming, we can easily
I'm
talk
fine
about
with
it.
that. We can draw this out for another 3 hours. I'm totally
Yeah,
good.
yeah, that's what I'm fearing. I wanted to also talk about some other stuff that you mentioned to me.
All right, yeah.
You told me that you created a whole sci-fi universe.
Oh God.
Do you want to talk about it?
Kinda. Well, the whole thing is I guess we should actually start the ADD stuff early because that kind of.
Did you want to talk about? Okay, let's talk about
All right,
the ADD
because
then.
yeah, I mentioned it a couple of times before.
Yeah, let's talk about the ADD. Yeah.
I have ADD and it's not fun, especially because I wasn't diagnosed until like a year ago, almost a year ago. And ADD is a weird sickness because especially if you look at the list of symptoms, it's stuff that the average person has every day, like procrastination, all that. And to the average person, it looks like it's more or less a made up thing because it's just it's what everyone has, but ADD people, they have it to the nth degree. My best example for this is always Latin. Like I said, I wanted to learn Latin, but I just couldn't. Because we had this book with just words, a German word, Latin word, and this tiny booklet, and I read that every night, just looking at the translations, looking at my words, learning this because our teachers also had this questioning at the beginning of every class where they ask, okay, what words have you recently learned, some grammar stuff. I really tried learning that, but I couldn't go 2 words without my mind just drifting off to somewhere completely different. And that's the go-to example. That's why, because the average person, even if he doesn't want to learn something, there's usually some way to do it. But with ADD, that becomes nearly impossible. And of course, that drags you down because the first teacher that I had in Latin basically told me, "Oh, André, he's basically useless. We don't want him. Just send him down. He apparently isn't good enough for the gymnasium for the highest tier. Just send him down a tier. He'll be better kept there." And my grades were perfectly fine everywhere else, but I just couldn't learn it, especially stuff that I didn't really want to learn. I just couldn't. And that drags you down, or even doing stuff that you want to do becomes extremely hard. Like I said, I tried learning drawing and all that sort of stuff. And at the first sign of resistance, your brain basically goes, nope, don't want to do that. Let's do something different. Even if it's just walking around your room for like 3 hours and just having conversations with yourself. Just your brain searches for every bit of distraction, every bit of escapism. And I've had that stuff for like pretty much since childhood. And I was just recently diagnosed with it because especially during Corona, I was just sitting in my room doing nothing. And that drags you down. If you do it like I did it at that point, 1.5 years. So that was like 2021, middle of 2021. If you really just sit in your room and do nothing, that drags you down a lot, especially if you're like me and you want to do stuff. And then it just, at some point, just by sheer fucking coincidence, it's some random chat room or some online thing. I looked at some forum. Someone posted a meme basically that showed off some of the symptoms of ADD, and just reading through the symptoms, I was like, okay, wow, that's basically a perfect description of me. Then I went to my mother, said, okay, I might need to get checked out. She, of course, my mother was very resistant about that whole stuff, especially because there was a time in 8th grade where the teachers actually said, okay, we might want to send André to a psychologist, because they apparently knew they saw some of the symptoms and decided to send me to a psychologist. And both me and my parents, they took it as a personal attack. We basically said, no, they're just trying to do me in, basically, especially because I ran into conflicts with my teachers a lot. I was, like I said, I was an asshole as a kid. And yeah, then I finally decided to get diagnosed. And one of the requirements for you to get a proper diagnosis is you need to have shown symptoms since the early times of your life. And one of the requirements we have in Germany is that you show your end of year reports for your first 4 grades, so 1st to 4th grade. because here in Germany, the teachers write a lot about your social behavior, your social development, all that stuff in those reports. And when my psychologist looked at those, he just said, wow, that's just template ADD here, because I was erratic, I was aggressive, I had problems with learning, I had all that sort of stuff. And the diagnosis went pretty quickly then, and they put me on meds. I'm on Ritalin now, which is, it's not an everything cure, but it definitely helps. And ever since then, like I said, I've changed a lot over the last year or so. Running that shit undiagnosed for 20 years, that was rough. There were some really, really rough and honestly dark times in my life before that, because I couldn't get anything done. My entire life was just preoccupied with school, because if I focused on anything else, I was just fail school, because my attention would just slip. That was rough, right? And then I got diagnosed, and everything changed. Suddenly I could concentrate on stuff. I could do stuff that I wanted to do. Just an entirely different world. So I've changed over the last a lot over the last year. Did a lot of soul searching too, I guess. Just figuring out what do I want to do now that I can actually do stuff, and all of that, right? And that's my ADD story. And because I said that we probably want to do this before the sci-fi story, because it actually they connect. Because with ADD, another problem, a lot of people report is that they just can't sleep, because what you end up doing is you start these conversations in your head. Like, I've done this with this podcast too. We have like 10 more hours of podcast just in my mind, me talking to you. That's what a lot of ADD people do, because they just start imagining conversations in their head with other people. And if you do that at night, you're not going to sleep, period. Because you usually get into such competitive arguments that, you're too preoccupied to sleep, basically. And that's something I suffer too from. And if you only get like 3-4 hours of sleep every night, that can be rough. And one way I actually found that really, really helped me personally, just beating that, was just imagining stuff, creating my own stories, own characters, own world. And that's how my sci-fi universe got started. Just me trying to find something that didn't take, I guess, as much brain power every night. And turns out if you do that every night for like an hour, you get a lot of content out of it. And so I've just been writing down this stuff for like 5-6 years now. Even before I knew I had ADD, of course, found this method and it worked really well. And I have a huge just list of concepts, of stories, of characters just written down, and I've not released anything yet, because I'm not even sure how I want to release it. For the longest time, I said I want to release it as a podcast, but then I want to release it as a book, and then I want to release it as maybe a video game, and then maybe something else, because there's still a good bit of ADD left in me, just constantly switching between doing this, doing that. But yeah, that's how it started. That's the entire story. Not the funnest topic, I know. Especially in school, I had a lot of problems in school, just period. And it would have been, if I got diagnosed in 8th grade, or the symptoms were there earlier, I could have get diagnosed in like 3rd or 4th grade. But I toughed it out somehow, and here I am, and I'm feeling great. Honestly, the last year has been awesome. Best time of my life. Despite everything, the geopolitical stuff happening in the background, I don't give a shit anymore. It's been fun. So much fun. Here I am. I still haven't released any of that sci-fi stuff, but we can talk about it if you want.
Oh man, that's amazing. Your ADD story is very, very interesting. So, thanks to meme.
Thanks to fucking meme, of course.
Thanks to fucking meme, yeah.
That's how it had to happen. Yeah. Oh, that's so wild. But yeah, that was. I mean, to be fair, I was already kind of thinking about what could possibly be wrong with me at that point. I was just searching for the right mental illness, if you will, because I knew something wasn't going right. A year before I figured out, quote unquote, I wasn't diagnosed, but before I figured out I had ADD, or I found this meme, I was in a really dark spot. Because again, I was a shut-in. I was really, really socially awkward. I couldn't get out of my room. I was constantly I had huge anxiety with school, just constant sheer terror of failing, all that stuff. I was in a really, really dark spot for a good while there. And since then, I was looking. I was, again, of course, I mean, as a kid, I knew the concept of ADD. But back in school, we made fun of those people. We said, oh, look at these hyperactive people. What's wrong with him? He can't even sit still for 2 minutes. And I'm not like that. Because for the longest time, people thought it was ADHD, and that was the only thing. But H, of course, standing for hyperactivity, that isn't the only thing. There are different kinds of it. And I'm not hyperactive, not really, but I still have the other symptoms, and that's the mental stuff is what gets you. That can really mess you up. I mean, if you 20 years was bad enough, especially like I said, some really awful teachers that I had, that can mess you up. But if it goes even longer, I've read stories of people that went like 40, 50 years undiagnosed. That's rough. That, I mean, it shapes you as a person, of course, because I wouldn't even call it mental illness. It's more like a different type of brain, because it's theorized that this whole ADD developed as back when we were hunters, and it was actually beneficial because as a hunter you could change your focus more quickly. You weren't hyper focused on one thing, but instead you could constantly switch around. But if you're, well, in modern times, it's not all that useful. And it's also not useful when you want to actually, do something, when you have big ambitions, like I have sometimes, if you actually want to get something done.
So the difference between ADD and ADHD is just the hyperactivity.
Right, that's the only thing, yeah.
So which are the symptoms from ADD? So you told us already about the hyperactivity in your mind, right? You have a lot of self-talk.
Right, self-talk, constant shift of focus. What a lot of people have, and what I also have, is, I think it's called RSD. It's rejection something, where basically every defeat and every no you receive from other people, or whenever something doesn't go well, you take it really personal. That's something I saw, especially when I went into art, because turns out art is very difficult, and you're gonna suck at art if you're gonna start off. So I just looked at my drawings and went, "Wow, I'm an awful human being." More or less, yeah. That's how it went. Yeah,
All right.
and
come on,
and of
man,
course
don't-
that I know, but it wasn't that extreme, of course, but gets ingrained in your brain, and it's not beneficial to anything. I mean, if you're gonna learn anything, whether it's playing guitar, even playing video games, you're gonna suck at the beginning. Period. And that's
but let's say how are you sure it's ADD? Maybe you're just you were socially awkward and had some anxiety problems, and you approach like your therapist or I'm not sure the correct term, the doctor, and already brought this ADD idea, and or you, because maybe it's not ADD. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm just
right. It is a very difficult thing to diagnose, even to this day.
exactly. Yeah.
The two big things that there used to be three things. So the three methods of verification back a couple of years ago even were, first of all, your first 4 grades.
All right.
Those reports, because you don't get ADD at some point during your life. You usually have it from the beginning. It's mostly in most cases it's genetic. So you need to have it from the beginning. And the second thing is when you take stuff like Ritalin, because ADD is a dopamine deficiency in your brain. So your receptors, basically, when you do an activity, they don't generate enough dopamine. And that's why you constantly switch focus, because your brain's basically constantly bored. And if you take Ritalin, what it does, it doesn't add dopamine to your system, but it prevents the reuptake of dopamine into the receptors. So dopamine stays around longer. And if that works, that usually is the confirmation. And for a while, they also had brain scans, but they don't do that anymore. And that was the confirmation.
Since when are you taking so 1 year, you told us?
I was diagnosed in, let me see. Right, that's another fun thing in Germany here, because we, of course, have a huge psychologist deficiency. We don't nearly have enough of those. So back in August or so of 2021, I said I wanted to get myself checked. Then I got an appointment in October. And then it took until January for me to actually be properly diagnosed and for me to start my treatment. And since January of last year, I've been taking it.
How many so it's once per day?
Twice. Yeah, I get the extended stuff. It lasts for about 4 hours.
How much it costs?
It's like $12, I think. It's not much, and you get I get 72 pills, I think, in one. So that's at the very least 72 pills, and you don't get to take it every day. It also doesn't make you addicted, which I'm very glad about.
Oh, so you don't take it every day? You just take it whenever the symptoms are
Usually I take it whenever I want to be productive, or when I want to do stuff. Whenever I want to feel like I have a big project ahead of me, or like I have school or something, because you don't really need it if you're just out around or being social or that stuff. That usually works.
Do you need a doctor involved? I'm sorry, I'm like questioning it.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I don't know anything about the subject, so I'm very
Yeah.
interested. Do you need a doctor invoice? How it's called again? It's not invoice, the correct term. Like
It's a
notice, doctor
prescription.
note. This prescription. Do you need a
Yeah.
prescription for it?
Yeah, I do. So every like 1 or 2 months, I basically go there, and he also only does a basic checkup. He asks, okay, how are you doing? Do we need to change the dosage and whatever? And of course, Ritalin it's a divisive subject, and for good reason, because I mean it's a mental drug, and that can get very dangerous very quickly. It really does. I mean, even if you look at the what's it called, the letter that comes with it, you know, that lists all the potential side effects of the drug. If your brain is built a certain way, you can get schizophrenia and stuff from that drug, straight up. Especially during children. I've heard several stories of children just starting to talk to like trash bins or something. Yeah, that's a very difficult thing. But luckily for me, the treatment worked perfectly pretty much from the first day, and from then on, and you feel the difference immediately. I mean, the first day was insane. The first day, I didn't know how to use the drug yet, because it's not a drug that makes you efficient or productive. It basically just reinforces whatever you're doing. So let's say you're watching YouTube videos, you take it, well, now you're more efficient at watching YouTube videos. Good job. So there's a lot of self-training involved. And like I said, it just inhibits the dopamine reuptake by your receptors. So you get more reward, basically. But you need to do something that's rewarding. And that's what makes the drug so cool, in my opinion, because it actually reinforces good patterns, it reinforces basically self-improvement and all that, all the rewarding activities you can do in your life. And I mean, like I said before I was just sitting in my room all day, either doing stuff for school, wasting way too much time on that because I just couldn't learn, or watching YouTube videos. And that was my life for several years in a row, barely going out, just right, because my brain was completely deficient and all that. And YouTube is a really good fucking drug. If you're just looking for dopamine, there it is. Right, and it's built that way. Of course, it's specifically engineered to do that, right? To get you to view stuff for as long as possible. Same with advertisements, all that stuff. And well, if you're one of those unfortunate people that's more or less built to fall for that, it can be difficult.
Yeah. Hey, I have never seen you talking to trash bin at the office, so it's working.
Yeah, I didn't develop schizophrenia. That's the last thing that needed to fucking happen in my life. Andre decides to finally get better, and he gets schizophrenia. That's something
good,
that would fit perfectly into my life.
You're fine. Everything's good. But I'm gonna tell you, I think there's a lot of people with ADD out there do not know about it. Like this whole YouTube rabbit hole that you told me about. I mean, it's so easy to fall into a rabbit hole. I think. I don't want to be honest about it, but I spend more hours than I should just researching about aliens on YouTube, one video after the other, and it's so engaging. They tell you so many conspiracy theories, and I just want to dive in and learn all about it.
Yeah, and look at that beautiful sidebar with another 50 videos that are even better than the one you're currently watching. You want to stick around on the platform for another 3 hours, don't you? Who cares?
And then it's 3 a.m. It's like, dude, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah, seriously, yeah. And I mean, that's what happens to people who don't get fucked over by their brain. It's rough. It's rough, definitely.
So you were born with it, right?
Yeah,
or it's something that you developed later in life.
You're born as the most up-to-date research says it's in like 80% of all cases it's genetic. So you're born with it, but you only develop symptoms. No, you have symptoms from the beginning of your life, but because school only starts later on, that's usually where you start noticing the symptoms. But there is a small subset of people that develop it through brain trauma. That could also be me, because back when I was like 8 years old, I fell from a bridge and suffered severe brain trauma.
What?
Yep.
Watch full episodes of the Brewcast on the main YouTube channel, youtube.com/@brewfrasca.